Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey is always top shelf. Whether you got your start as a Dynasty veteran, a Millbury survivor, or you were born into the Church of Trotz, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, here are your eclectic hosts, Sean Cuthbert and Christian Arnold.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Monday, February 1st. 2021, coming at you live from the Hockey Night New York studios on Long Island. Another very special show coming up for you tonight, a Blizzard edition of Hockey Night in New York. As you can see, a little bit of a different setup here between Christian and myself. Due to the snow, we couldn't actually be here physically together, so we got him Skyping.
And we couldn't be more happy about it.
Yeah, I feel great about that, by the way. But big show coming up for you. Shannon Hogan of MSG Network will be joining us tonight, so that'll be a lot of fun. Can't wait to get involved, even though things aren't that great in Islander country. But my name is Sean Cuthbert. With me, as always, is Mr. Christian Arnold. How are you?
I'm doing well, Sean. How are you holding up during this storm?
You know, I'm doing okay. Just it's quiet. It's a lot of alone time. You know. So you don't get.
I'm sure you're used to that, though.
Well, you know, I mean, you can't really go anywhere, you know, so you're kind of just within your own four walls. But I got through it, and here we are. Now we get to talk some hockey, some bad hockey, but we get to talk some hockey. So let's get into it. But first, I want to remind everybody that we are happily sponsored by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Head on over for great food, great people, and great service. Check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com. And we want to thank our sponsor, Tide Technology, a voice-over IP company providing phone services for businesses across the country. If you are tired of dealing with long hold times and the impersonal service of companies like Spectrum, Optima, and Verizon, give Tide Technology a call at 516-856-7800 for 3 months of free service. And now, on to the hockey. The Islanders are back from a 5-game road trip, and it didn't go very well. They took 2 points via overtime losses to the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's pretty much all they have to write home about. What do you say, CA?
Certainly was not the way the Islanders thought this road trip, or most people thought this road trip was going to go.
No.
It was a rough one, to say the least. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from it. There's a lot of things to take away from it. And if you're the New York Islanders, you got to learn these lessons pretty quickly. They put themselves in quite a bit of a hole here, and it's not going to get much easier as we continue to go forward. I guess the positive, you want to try and be positive about all of this, is that perhaps maybe there'll be some lineup consistency going forward. You know, you look at what Barry Trotz was able to do during the road trip, and you look at the guys that he was able to play, and he's literally, for the most part, gotten to play everyone that you would expect would get a chance in the lineup. And I think at the very least, if you're trying to be positive about the whole thing, that it is something that you can kind of hang your hat on, is the fact that, all right, he's seen everybody. He knows what everyone can do. Now it's time to get your lineup solidified and ready to roll, because this season's not going to get much easier.
Yeah, look, there's been a recurring theme so far with this season, and it's been the third line. It's been figuring out just where to have your forwards. And I know we've seen a little mix and a match and now a little bit with Bailey and Eberle as far as the first and second line goes, but clearly Barry Trotz is still trying to figure out who is going to fill out that top 9. And clearly there's been an issue in doing that. Not to say that that's the only reason why they're struggling so far through 9 games, but you know, it's been a problem so far, and they don't have a lot of time to figure this out, because yeah, you can say only 9 games in, but you hit the 14-game mark, Christian, and we're already at the quarter mark of the season. And
hey, it's like someone you were hanging out with over the weekend said something very similar to that.
I mean, it was probably me. I hang out with myself.
I mean, it might have been me, but whatever.
I don't think it was.
Take credit for
Was
what,
it you? Was it you?
Take credit for what I said. Yeah, it might have been me.
Okay. Either way, point is, they got to figure this out fast. They got to figure it out fast. You know, look, they're still obviously within striking distance of a playoff spot. It's not time to panic yet. It's not. I know we asked after the game on Sunday, how's everybody feeling after the game, and you know, there was a range of responses up on Twitter. But some people said time to panic. Some people said, you know, we're looking for some, I guess, a little more outlandish roster moves and stuff like that. But look, it's not crazy time yet, but we're not far from it. Like they do have to. I mean, I figured Sunday was more or less for as far as nine games into the season goes, probably the biggest must win of a ninth game of a season, given the shortness of this one. I felt like they had to get those 2 points. They got one. Barry was talking pretty positively after the game, and he felt good about it. I don't know if that's just, mental stuff to keep the boys, positive and stuff. But look, they haven't been able to put together a consistent 60 minutes yet. And when even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes, it seems like when they do have a lull in their play, it just really bites them in the ass.
Yeah, and I think you saw it in a couple of these games. I mean, you saw it in Washington after they took the 3-0 lead into, in that game.
Yeah.
You saw it a couple times over the course of these games here, even when they're not leading, but they're not being able to finish. Sunday is a great example of that. The Islanders put a great first period. They dominated for the most part. They were the better team in the first period. They had the chances. They had the goaltending. Everything was going their way. They just couldn't find the back of the net. And then, of course, you got a minute or so left in the game in the first period, and the Philadelphia is the one that gets the goal.
Right.
It's just those kind of bad breaks, and it's that inability to finish. And then you look at the second period, and things kind of, looked like they had things under control. They tie the game pretty early, and then things kind of fall apart after that pretty quickly. So you're right. I think the biggest enemy for the New York Islanders right now is the consistency. I think they'll say that themselves. I think you talk to them after the game. One of the biggest things that all of them talked about, whether it was Anders Lee, whether it was Nick Leddy, whether it was Josh Bailey, whether it was Barry Trotz, is the consistency. They know they have to be more consistent. I think the question is, how do you be more consistent? Or is this something that's a bit more than just a minor issue right now? And I think that's the big question. How do you fix that problem? Because it sounds so simple, right? Yeah. It's we got to be consistent. Right. But what do you do to be consistent? How do you put that consistent 60-minute effort in? Well, the Islanders are capable of doing it. We've seen them do it in the past. We've seen them even earlier this season when they played the Rangers for the most part, and those wins against New Jersey, the first one against New Jersey, or the only one against New Jersey, yes. I should say. Yeah. There was, for the most part, a 60-minute effort. It wasn't, there was a little lull in the second period each of those games, but for the most part, it was a 60-minute effort. And the question becomes, how do you now duplicate that? And why is it that you've kind of lost that steam? I think it's a tough question to answer right now.
It is, and people have to remember, I mean, this is a theme for every team in the NHL. There's no fan base, no matter whether it's Toronto, Tampa Bay, Colorado, or anybody else for that matter. There's nobody that can really legitimately go into a game, a season and expect them to play 82 out of 82 or 56 out of 56 on all cylinders. It's just not going to happen. The main thing is just to make sure, you're outweighing the crappy ones, right? And right now they're not. They're just kind of, they've meandered through these 9 games where, again, like we've pointed out, they've had some good play and they definitely improved against Philadelphia. There's no doubt about that. And they might have deserved a better fate. I mean, if you start getting into more of the details of these games, you look at that blown icing call, obviously in the last one, that burned them big time. But you can make that point, but at the same time, they still need to be playing a more complete enough game where that's not going to be the play you look at to say, oh, well, that's why they lost, because of a blown icing. I mean, they still have to be playing well enough to not only win these games, but be able to just maintain it over the course of a stretch. And they kind of teased us with that first game against the Rangers to open the season, and they squeaked out that win against Boston, and then it looked like they were getting back on track against Jersey, and then for whatever reason the wheels have just really been shaky on the bus right now.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, there you said something that was really interesting. That was the fact, and I know it's shocking. Sean saying something really interesting. It doesn't happen too often.
Right.
You said something about the icing, the blown icing call, which was obviously a blown call, no question about it. But I think I put it on social media after that call, is that the Islanders, yes, it was a blown call, but the Islanders have to be a team now that responds to it. They can't let that be the one thing that gets in their way.
Right.
And I think for a second you saw that it looked like they were they were responding well to it. Like I said, they get the quick goal in the second period, but things kind of fall off, and they don't really have a response to the Philadelphia push. And I think that's the thing that's a little, I don't want to say concerning, but certainly something to watch for, is that the fact that they don't have these responses to push by Philadelphia, by the Washington Capitals, by the New Jersey Devils, by the New York Rangers, even in those earlier games to start the year. There's kind of a consistent theme here where they're not being able to weather the storm. And once the opposing team is able to take advantage of that, the Islanders find themselves, up a creek without a paddle, and they're trying to use their hands to fight back into it, and they do a decent effort in the third period. You're seeing them be much more consistent third period team, which is good. But when you're playing down, 3-1, 4-1, with or scoreless, you don't have a goal yet. You're putting yourself in a position that's just not one you want to be in. And I think that's the thing. The Islanders need to find a way to score the first goal. I think they scored the first goal on this road trip twice, I think.
Right.
And they've held a lead twice that entire road trip in the 5-game span. So that's a problem.
Yes, it is.
They need to find a way to right from the get-go be able to establish their game and be able to find the back of the net early and play with the lead, because you're not giving Semyon Varlamov a chance to play with the lead, and you're not giving Ilya Sorokin the chance to play with the lead.
Yeah,
and he was stellar for the Islanders in the opportunities he's gotten during this road trip. It's just he's playing from a position, a weaker position. He's playing down a couple goals instead of up a couple goals. And you look at some of those saves he made during the course of the game, especially on Sunday, and he would have been great if the Islanders had a 3-1 lead, a 3-2 lead.
Yeah.
He would have been the difference maker. Instead, the Islanders aren't able to capitalize on some chances of their own, and it's a much different looking game. Yeah,
and I would be a little more laid back about this stretch if it was an 82-game season. I mean, look, every season is going to have its ups and downs. You're going to have stretches where you're not playing your best, or even if you look at the Islanders last year, they went on that long stretch, that long streak with all the points and everything like that, and you knew it was going to end eventually, and you knew they were going to go through a rough patch. Now, again, it might have been a bonus that they ended the season early for them, but my point is that you're going to have these ebbs and flows in the season. The problem, though, is that you kind of can't be too laid back about it, because they chopped almost 30 games off the schedule, so there's no. You can only take so many games to work out the kinks, and that puts the pressure on not only the players but on Barry too to figure out what's going to get these guys going, during this short season. And I remember saying it on Twitter. I think I was speaking to our pal Sal, who listens to the show, and I said that really the truth is the playoffs in this season are going to be decided by the last 10 or so games of this season, because all the teams that you would expect to be in the mix for a playoff spot, whether you think it's 4 teams, whether you think it's 5 teams, whatever the case may be, I would like to think that they're all going to be close enough together where it's going to come down to who's hot at the end. So maybe it's okay that they're having a rough patch now as long as they figure it out, but they got to figure it out soon, and they got to make sure that they still stay close enough to the pack so they are in the mix to potentially go on a run at the end.
No, I agree. I think it's a interesting point you make there. I don't want to say good point, because I really don't want to compliment you. But
that's 2.
It's a fair point, and it certainly puts them in an interesting position. I think the other interesting thing, and I don't necessarily have the schedule right in front of me, but the Islanders do end up playing a couple of these teams again down the stretch. The Philadelphias, the Rangers, the Devils, and I want to say Buffalo in those last couple games, that 10, 15 game stretch that you're talking about. And while certainly, I think we both kind of think that Buffalo is not going to be in a position where they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot. And I know you think a little less of New Jersey being there at that point of the season, although they're off to a pretty good start right now. Those are going to be tough games.
Yeah, they all are.
And even
all of them.
And even if they're not in the position to be fighting for a playoff spot, you have to imagine they're going to want to play spoiler for the Islanders. Come an opportunity like that towards the end of that stretch.
Sure. Well, I don't mean to cut you off, but we got a break now because Shannon Hogan from MSG Network is going to join us. So I want to thank you all for hanging out with us here at Hockey Night New York. Remember, you can tune in live for the Twitch stream at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. We'll be right back.
Customer service is the backbone of any great business, and reliable telecommunication is essential to keeping your client base happy. Introducing Ty Technology, a low-cost, flexible internet phone service founded on the idea that every customer deserves exceptional service while providing simple setup and management and easy integration to clients across the country. Ty Technology will not only create a custom solution tailored to your specific needs, but will partner with you to provide a competitive edge to you and your clients. And if you need support, you won't be routed to an automated call center in another another country, you'll get a live representative that had a personal hand in building your account. So Islander fans, if your business is looking for a change from companies like Spectrum, Verizon, or Optimum, Thai Technology is offering 3 free months of service for any of its affordable packages. Just call 516-856-7800. That's 516-856-7800. Or visit them on the web at ThaiTechnology.com. That's Thai, T-I-E, Technology.com. Thai Technology, the right choice for your internet phone service.
The only thing better than a great Long Island deli is a great Long Island deli run by die-hard Islander fans. Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, will make any Islander fan feel right at home with its familiar blue and orange theme and Isles decor. Blue Line Deli and Bagels proudly serves Bagel Boss bagels, along with breakfast favorites, hockey-themed heroes, quesadillas, salads, fresh-made smoothies, and much more. So stop on in for delicious food, a clean atmosphere, and a happy staff ready to greet you with friendly service no matter what team you support. Want to place an order for pickup? Call 631-944-3222 or visit BlueLineDeli.com to check out the menu and order online. Blue Line Deli and Bagels, where the great selections will have you saying, yes, yes, yes.
Hope you enjoyed the ads. Now let's get back to Hockey Night in New York with Sean Cuthbert and Christian Arnold.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Hockey Night in New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. It is time for On the Line, brought to you by Thai Technology. Joining us right now from MSG Network, the great Shannon Hogan. Shannon, how are you tonight?
Hi, guys. It's like Hockey Night in New York in a blizzard, right?
Yes, the special stormy edition of Hockey Night in New York. Want to thank you.
Christian, I literally just gave Sean the biggest heart attack because he called me and my phone was across the room. And I was like, no! It was like slow-mo to the last ring. And my husband was like, get the phone. So don't worry. We made it just in the nick of time.
Just in the nick of time.
That makes it all even better, Shannon. I like that you gave Sean a little bit of a panic attack there.
Yeah, he wanted to play it cool, but he was a little nervous.
Oh, no,
like,
I'm totally
20
fine.
minutes. What are we going to talk about?
Well,
Shannon, if you didn't know, we're actually separated because of the blizzard. So the brains and the talent of the operation is elsewhere today. When I left Sean in charge of everything technical, so just in case something.
Shannon,
goes wrong.
for the sake of the interview, I'm going to let him just get away with that so we can move on.
It's fine. Go ahead. We'll let it roll, Sean. We'll let it roll.
Appreciate it. So, Shannon, obviously not everything is sunshine and rainbows right now, not only outside but also in Islander country due to the recent 5-game road trip that the Islanders went on. So let's start there. We'll talk about what might have happened or didn't happen there. What do you make of this stretch? And I suppose the potential urgency on this team to turn around soon. Christian and I were just talking about it before you came on, that they got to get things going because we only got 56 games this season.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, you guys. There definitely is a sense of urgency, and I think you feel that when you listen to the players in their pre- and post-game interviews. They know that they won't be the team that makes it to the Eastern Conference Finals again if they play the way that they did on a consistent basis over the last week and a half or so. The thing is, we did see a couple of periods of good hockey, a couple of 10-minute intervals there, and some nice goals, some nice play. But they need to be consistent. And when they weren't consistent, they were making the mistakes that we're not really used to seeing with a Barry Trotz type of team. And so the fact that they're on this 5-game skid is definitely not the way that they had planned on starting this shortened season. At the same time, you'll hear Barry say very often that you have to go through adversity to be a good team. So we're going to chalk it up to that. But I don't want to let this skid go that much longer, if you know what I mean.
Shannon, you mentioned the consistency, and I think the question that Sean and I have been trying to figure out, or the answer we're trying to figure out, is how do the Islanders get back to that consistent level? I mean, it sounds so simple when you say, oh, they got to be consistent, but what does the team need to do to be consistent for a 60-minute contest?
I think a lot of that it sounds kind of cliche, but it's almost like doing anything else in your own life. It's a routine, and it's taking things one day at a time. So, if you're trying to eat healthy or do a dry January, you can't be like, oh my gosh, I have like 31 days. You have to do it one day at a time, one game at a time. And I know that sounds so cliche for sports, but it is true. I do really think that the guys believe that they look at it one shift at a time and one period at a time, and they try to build off of the good periods that they have. It's just frustrating when you don't get some of those bounces too, because I really feel in Philadelphia, those were 2 games that they could have won. And obviously going into overtime, it's deflating when you've had a couple of good periods mixed in through those 2 games to not, come away at least with 2 points in one of the games. But listening to the players, it sounds like they realize that there were some good aspects to the game. They're trying to build on that, and they know that they have to be consistent. There comes a point, you guys, where it's about execution. You have the plan, you have the strategy, you have the skills. You just need to go out and execute. So hopefully they'll be able to do that.
For sure, Shannon. And I guess to just continue on the theme of scratching for positives to take out of this stretch here is the Islanders did finally put a goal in the net for Ilya Sorokin. And
oh my gosh, how long is this poor kid gonna be there before someone scores?
Seriously. So that finally happened, and it looked like there was a decent chance to get the kid a win. It obviously didn't pan out, but and the first game that he got in, we all know was a rough one. Everybody wants to forget about that. But what do you think of Sorokin's play now that he's actually been able to play a game that he knew he was scheduled to play, and perform with a couple of goals in there? What do you think of him?
I think it's a building process for him. I think the expectations from all the Islanders fans, and really, to be honest, me included, from everything we've been reading about this kid and all the hype around him, that we were expecting him to come in and in game 1 or 2 be like, yep, that guy's going to win the Vezina. Like, that's what I was expecting. And
right.
And ultimately there is, a learning curve with a different size rink, a different league, different team, a different language. I mean, there are things that you have to kind of grow into. New goaltending coaches, working on things that maybe are strengths or not strengths of him, or the way that they want him to approach, certain things in net. So I felt great after last night's game because there were some really great saves. He didn't have to stop a lot, but the few exciting saves that he did make, I was like, okay, I see the flash of brilliance there. Everybody take a deep breath. It's only a matter of time. And luckily for the Islanders, Varlamov, other than, I'm going to discount one of those games, was really fantastic to start the year. And he was rock solid for the Islanders in the postseason. So yeah. I don't think that goaltending is the concern for the Islanders right now. I think everybody just needs to get on the same page. I think they need to figure out how they can get the 4 lines going, because they need more offense than just that top line.
Talking with MSG Network Shannon Hogan here on the line, presented by our friends over at Tide Technology. And Shannon, you were talking a little bit about, when we were talking about consistency, you're talking about being in a rhythm and kind of a routine. And one thing Andrew Gross from Newsday was asking about last night, and I think he wrote about it today for Newsday, was the fact that even the road trips this year are very different from years past. Where obviously you're not on your routine and already on a road trip, but players for the most part were confined to their hotel rooms when they weren't on the ice. There's a lot of alone time unless they were at the rink. How much, again, not to make excuses for the team, but how much do you think that kind of throws off everyone's rhythm, especially when they're trying to find that consistency and they're dealing with all these different things going on? How much does that impact the team, especially on a lengthy road trip like they just got through?
I'm not sure how much it really impacts it. I do think from years past, what you hear about teams is that going on the road is a chance to kind of bond. This already is a really close team. I mean, most of these guys have been together for years and years now. And, the addition of Andy Green and JG Pajot last year, once they kind of got in the mix in the summer, it was a pretty seamless transition. And they spent a lot of time together in the bubble. So, yeah, I mean, with the COVID protocols right now, it is a different scenario to me, from the outside looking in. And if you ask the guys, they'll say, it is what it is. We're playing hockey. But from the outside looking in, I think personally it would be tough if you don't feel like you're scoring. If you're someone who is still looking for that first goal of the season, or your line isn't going, or you're JG Pajot and you don't even know who's going to be on your line for the next game. Like, to me, right. It's a lot of extra downtime. And I think everybody approaches that differently. I can't speak for the players because I actually haven't asked them how they've handled that. It's a good question, but I think some guys try to unwind. They play, video games or whatever. They watch Netflix. But normally on the road, they would all go to dinner, and it might not all be like one whole team dinner together, but they break up in groups of 5, 6, 7, 8, and they would go to dinner together. And I think just having that social outlet, it's something I'm sure they're missing, just like the rest of us are. I mean, everybody's had to make different sacrifices to keep do their jobs, do the best they can, cope, keep themselves safe. And I think the same goes for the NHL. How much that affects it, I'm not sure it's substantial, but I'm sure it is something different that they wouldn't have had to think about in years past.
Without a doubt, Shannon. And just to keep it on the team here a little bit, on the ice, another guy who's finding his way, who's kind of having a coming out party, who we've been keeping tabs on since the season started, is Noah Dobson back on defense. It seems like after all the sheltering he got last season in the bubble, barely even getting on the ice, he's getting a lot of minutes here. He's getting trusted a lot by Barry Trotz, and he's already got himself a decent amount of points since he started. Maybe just touch on how Noah Dobson's acclimated himself so far in this new season.
Yeah, I think it's been everything we've been expecting and maybe a little more. I mean, last year we really didn't get to see him very often. It's hard to you have to think about what an elite hockey player is used to throughout their entire career. They're used to playing those minutes. They're used to playing games on a regular basis. And then, the team makes the decision not to send him back to juniors and keep him around. He's not in those game atmosphere that kind of heated competition on a night in, night out basis. I know there are fewer games in juniors, but still, I mean, that game experience Noah Dobson wasn't getting, as regularly last season. I still think it was a good idea. I think he learned a lot. I think he grew a lot. I think physically he was able to challenge himself and get stronger. I mean, he's a young guy, and the body can really change with, off ice training and whatnot. And those couple of years, you look at Matt Barzal and how he's gotten stronger, and even Anthony Beauvillier. I mean, those guys from, 18 to 23, 24 years old, you're still trying to get into that best athletic body, for your sport. So I think it was really beneficial for Dobson to be around the team last year. He lived with Dennis Seidenberg, who's amazing. His wife, Rebecca, phenomenal cook, also fashionista and
Nice.
very fun. So I'm sure, having that home feeling there, they're a great family. And then having Dennis to kind of talk to and learn from. He, obviously had an amazing NHL career and is quite the veteran and leader. That was beneficial. And I think then you pair him with Andy Green, and they've really been a nice pair. And you kind of have a defenseman that's calm and knows what to do, and you have a young guy that has all this talent. It's been exciting to see him on the power play. I just think he's getting more and more comfortable, and the more comfortable he gets, the longer the leash becomes, and the more Barry Trotz trusts him, and the more the minutes creep up. So I think nothing but, you're still going to see a couple hiccups here and there because he is still a young player and there's still things he's learning. But I think that the future is very bright for him, and he's going to be a big part of the Islanders' success this year.
It's hard not to talk about the young Islanders' talent without talking about Kiefer Bellows and Oliver Wahlstrom. And obviously, it seems like Barry Trotz is happy with the way they've developed over the early part of the season here. They didn't play on Sunday, but what have you seen out of Bellows and Wahlstrom? And do you think we're going to see them more frequently in the lineup as the season progresses?
Yeah, I think we're going to see them more frequently as the season progresses. And I think with the back-to-back situation, two-part, Barry was clear he wants to create competition. And I do think that there is still competition for really two spots on the wing, whether or not, especially with Anthony Beauvillier out right now, there's competition for who's going to be on that second, third line. I think the top line and the fourth line, if the Islanders have everybody healthy, can be fairly, solidified. But I thought Austin Czarnik was impressive last night. Yeah. I mean, I really didn't have a feel for what he was going to bring. I thought he was very noticeable. I think he looked comfortable. And I think he made a case for getting another game for sure.
Sure.
And so to me, with Bellows and Wahlstrom, they've been in the system a long time. I think the talent's there, but those are guys that need to score. I mean, that's what they were drafted for. So, I think the more opportunity they get, hopefully they'll kind of find their way and slide right in there. But with the COVID, protocols and everything that we have and the taxi squads, Barry's been very clear that he wants to keep everybody involved. So I do think you're going to see kind of a little bit of a rotating door with the competition until somebody grabs it and says, hey, keep me in, I deserve to be here. And I do think between those three, and even Timoshov, I don't think he was as noticeable as Zarnik last night, but I think those four, plus you have a Leo Komarov, who has a veteran presence. I don't think he's had his best couple of games this year, but we've seen Uncle Leo slide in great and really have, some pizzazz and jump in the game. So I think there are plenty of good options. It's now adding into that first topic we talked about, the consistency.
For sure, Shannon. And last one for me, we had you on back during the playoff run, and we talked a little bit about, obviously, the big difference with, the teams being in the bubbles. And, not only does that, environment change for the players and the coaches and everybody involved, but it also does for you and the broadcast team and everything. You talked about how you had to make adjustments. So it's changed a little bit again, right? There's no bubble.
Yeah.
You have the teams are traveling again, even though there's no fans in the building. What's it been like for you guys at MSG? Like, even like last night you had AJ, kind of doing the in-studio from home thing. What's it been like for you guys, making another adjustment here with, these, strange times that we're in?
Yeah, bottom line, you guys, is everybody just wants to watch hockey, right?
Yeah.
I think at this point, people are just thrilled that there's hockey on television, that we're watching the Islanders, that they're, going to be in this competitive East Division. So I think that is the whole thing. And we just want to bring the fans at home the best product that we can. There are hurdles, it's not easy for Brendan and Butch to call a game from a studio and not be there. They can see more when they're there. But I think they've done a darn good job through the playoffs and so far early this season of bringing the fans at home as much of the insight and calling of the games and energy that you would expect, not being in an arena. I think they've done a great job. For AJ and I, it's much more fun when we're together. Having her next to me, 6 feet apart, and wearing masks when we're not on. But it's a long season. And so we're happy to have the capability now. And I think it's become more normalized. People are used to seeing the Zoom interviews or the boxes like that, and if we're not able to be at the game anyway, I think it's a great opportunity to keep her incorporated in our show. She's got really valuable insight. She knows this team, and it's a whole lot of fun with the four of us. So for us, it's a little different. We're kind of back and forth between the Coliseum and the MSG Network studios. Even stranger being at the Coliseum when they're playing there without fans is being there when there's no one in the building except for us. That being said, it gives you it's so magical being in the building, even when the fans aren't there. Like, you just feel special at the Coliseum, and it was so nice and kind of emotional the first home game that we were there, and they took the ice for warm-ups and the music's going, and it was this blend of oh my gosh, it's almost normal, and then oh, our people aren't here, I love the fans. I love seeing everybody. I love the season ticket holders and the kids and seeing the players' wives come to the game and their kids. I miss that. But at the end of the day, hockey's on TV. We're doing the best we can, and we appreciate people for, sticking with us if we have technical hiccups here or there. And I hope they know that we're doing the best we can to get the show on the air and bring you guys Islanders hockey.
Absolutely, Shannon. Christian, you have anything else for Shannon?
No, I think we covered it.
Well, Shannon, fantastic stuff. Really appreciate you giving us some time tonight. Awesome as always. Keep up the great work over at MSG Network. We love watching the broadcasts over there. And have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, guys. Stay warm. We've got snow drifts of 2 feet over here.
Wow.
I'm out in Suffolk County, so I don't know.
Stay inside.
We'll see.
Stay inside.
I'm staying in. I'm staying bundled. Have a good night, you guys.
You too.
Go
Take
out.
care, Shannon.
Bye.
All right, folks, that was the great Shannon Hogan of MSG Network for a little segment of On the Line, brought to you by Tide Technology. Awesome stuff, Christian. Let's assess. Let's talk about it. It's nice to get a little insight on their experience as well, right? Because we're just used to seeing them in front of the camera doing their job, and you don't get really the behind the scenes on how it works. And I mean, it has to be a little weird walking into an empty Nassau Coliseum to do a broadcast where there's just no environment of fans and interaction, stuff like that. So it's nice to get that little behind the scenes scoop, if you will.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. I think for everybody, it's a weird experience from the people who are covering the Islanders via TV. I mean, Brendan and Butch are all again. I mean, they did a tremendous job last year from having to do all the games from the MSG studio to this year where they've been on site for the home games. They've been on site for the road games at the Nassau Coliseum, like Shannon was alluding to, and then having to do some games from the studio. I mean, those guys are true professionals. I was saying to a buddy the other day, actually, it's funny that New York has some, New York teams probably have some of the best broadcasting teams.
Oh yeah.
In any sport, you look at the Islanders with Brendan and Butch, and Brendan is a world class talent. We've had him on our show.
A very short span of time. Yeah.
And a very, very talented broadcaster. Yeah. And you look at some of the other teams and the broadcasters that they have. I mean, the Mets and Howie Rose and Gary Cohen and those guys. Those are two great broadcasters as well, I should say. Knicks with Mike Breen, who's a legend in himself. Kenny Albert, who's the voice, part-time voice of the New York Rangers for TV, radio, and now he's going to be he's the lead voice for the National Hockey League. Started here in New York, and he does Knicks games as well. So, New York is blessed with the fact that they have a lot of talented broadcasters calling these games, even and doing a tremendous job. Brendan and Butch, especially Shannon and AJ and everyone on the broadcast as well, pregame and postgame show, they do a tremendous job. And it's definitely weird. Like I said, I think for everybody, it's weird being in the Nassau Coliseum without any fans. It's weird watching a game with no noise. I think there was a point in I want to say the New Jersey Devil game that they turned off the crowd noise in the building that was being pumped in. And so we were sitting there in the writers kind and it was just kind of you're just hearing the players on the ice. Yeah. And it was a very bizarre moment. It was kind of cool, but at the same time very eerie and kind of thrust you back into the realization that we're this is somewhat normal, but it's still not really that normal at all.
Right.
And it's kind of contending with those emotions that you're happy to be there, but it certainly loses some of its luster, I guess you could say, with the fact that there's nobody else in the building, and the fans that bring the energy and kind of make the Nassau Coliseum what it is. Certainly, it loses some of that excitement that you would usually have, especially during those close games.
Of course, and but I like Shannon's positive outlook. At least we still get to watch hockey. And look, it's going to get better. We'll eventually be back in there. I'm still holding out hope that we'll get into some buildings by the spring. We'll see if that works out, but I'm going to maintain that hope.
I know. I mean, it's all you can really do.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of the team, if you're a fan of hockey, and if you're a fan of just getting back to some level of normalcy, hope is the best thing you got right now.
Yeah.
And I think you're not the only one. The Nassau County executive Laura Curran told us at NYI Hockey Now that she was hopeful that the Islander fans would be able to get into the building at some point during the playoffs. And I think that's somewhat of a realistic goal, especially which is it's a much bigger conversation, has much more broader implications. Yes. But as vaccines roll out and they start to get a handle of what's been going on in the world the last almost a year now, life will start to shift back to some sense of normalcy, and that includes getting back to being at sporting events.
Yeah, and the Flyers did a pretty decent job with their crowd noise. They had some "Let's Go Flyers" chants going. I don't think the Islanders have done that, like any phony "Let's Go Islander" chants. I know they started pumping the yes 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 in, I believe, but I thought the Flyers did a pretty good job with their fake crowd noise for whatever that's worth. I mean, because as a viewer, watching on TV, and I felt this way during the return to play in the playoffs last season. You forget that they're in the circumstances that they are. Like maybe whether it's the crowd noise or not, look, if it wasn't there, it would obviously make a huge difference. But I feel like while I was watching the games, I really didn't notice the difference. I really didn't.
Yeah, no, I think you look at how the Islanders have done. I think they've done a good job with not being overdoing it with the crowd noise and trying to make it seem normal, because at a certain point you're just kind of like, all right, we get it. You're filling the building with just fake noise. We're not stupid.
Yeah.
And I think there are other teams. The Rangers got a lot of flack for it during their first game against the Islanders. A lot of the writers and broadcasters in the building complained a little bit about how loud the noise was. But I think yeah. So, but I think the Islanders did a pretty good job. Their home games that they were at Nassau Coliseum. I think they had just the right amount, and it wasn't too overbearing, and it did the job, because you put a little underlying noise under, and it kind of it keeps you in the experience without totally pretending like things are normal.
I think one of the dead giveaways, though, that it's not an authentic crowd is you usually hear at least one get off the ice, Bailey. In a Nassau Coliseum audience, and MSG is not going to be pumping those out, or the a Coliseum PA guy, whoever's running that thing. You're not going to hear that there. So I think that's the one giveaway. But let's steer it back to the ice. We talked enough about what's going on in the crowd, or the lack thereof, and we started talking about Timashov and Zarnik with Shannon. So why don't we pick up with that? Talk about them getting into the lineup. And I would have to agree with Shannon that Zarnik looked pretty good coming in. Whether that means he's going to get more time out there or not, we'll see. Why don't you share your opinion on his performance and Timashov's coming into the games?
Yeah, no, I think I certainly tend to agree with Shannon's assessment. Zarnik was certainly noticeable a couple big times too. There's a couple efforts, I want to say, in the first period where he was able to get back and break up a couple plays, a couple scoring chances for the Philadelphia Flyers. He certainly didn't look out of place. He looked like he was fitting into the system that the Islanders are trying to employ for the team on Sunday night. I think it was a good audition, and for a first impression in a new organization, Austin Zarnik did a very good job.
Even saw some power play time,
making himself known. Yeah. So the coaching staff clearly liked what they saw, and they were giving him chances in different situations. So it's a good sign. I think you certainly look at his body of work in that game, and it's nothing really you can be disappointed about. Timashov, again, I agree with Shannon. I think that he was fine. I don't think he was as noticeable.
Right.
I don't think he got much power. I don't think he got much playing time at all in the third period, if any. And so, again, it goes to show you where the coaching staff kind of sees his game at as well. If you're not putting him out there, especially with the game the way it was, they're down by 2 goals, I want to say, at that point, and that he's, they're not putting him out there. So I think it maybe said that not that they were disappointed with what his play was, but certainly not the same enthusiasm, if you will, the way they had or were with Austin Zarnik. But it was fine. I don't think he beats out a Kiefer Bellows or Oliver Wahlstrom for a roster spot, but it's a competition, as Shannon was talking about, and that seems to be the kind of theme for what the coaching staff is trying to do here, especially with Anthony Beauvillier out. They want these guys to compete for roster spots, and they want to be able to put, a Zarnik in one night and be able to throw in a Bellows or a Wahlstrom in the next night, and not see any drop off from the production that line in particular has, or the team overall has. I think that you would like to see a little more consistency. Obviously, again, you have
that's what I was
a
about
situation
to say.
where Beauvillier kind of the injury to Beauvillier kind of throws a wrench in the idea of having a consistent lineup, but I think now, like I was saying earlier, that you have Barry Trotz, who's seen basically everyone you'd want him to see that's going to get a chance to play on one of those positions, now have been out on the ice in a game situation. And he kind of has an idea of what works, what doesn't work. Obviously, for some guys, it's a 1-game sample size. For other guys, it's a bigger sample size. But at the same time, you now have an idea of how these guys are going to play in these game situations and what might be the best lineup going forward. For the Islanders, too, you're dealing with the roster situation. You're dealing with, all right, if you have Sorokin on the roster, you kind of have to keep a Bellows or a Wahlstrom on the taxi squad. Or there's a lot of roster gymnastics that have to be done with the way things are set up this season. Yeah,
I agree, but I do want to harp on that consistency thing. Not only with performing in the games, but also with the roster. I mean, especially for the sake of guys like Pajot, you're kind of making things tougher for him because he's got to adjust to a different winger or 2 wingers sometimes each night because they still don't know who they're going to put in there. Now, granted, they have, as we well know, they have guys who are vying for these spots, and obviously nobody's really grabbed it by the horns and ran with it yet. You've seen some guys, some positive things. Obviously, Wallstrom got himself a goal. Bellows has looked pretty good. And now, we're talking about Zarnik here. But I really think that the coaching staff needs to just kind of hone in on somebody here for those 2 winger spots. And, look, you switch the lineup up every now and then. That happens, right? Maybe you get a different matchup against a different team. You want to see a different guy. That's normal. That's fine. But I'd like to see a more steady pair of wingers lining up against Pajot, with Pajot, whoever that is. Obviously, in a perfect world, I think most Islander fans would want to see Bellows and Wallstrom, right? They're the young guns.
Oh, 100%.
They're expected to score goals. If things are going right for them and they're in the lineup, that means there's probably some goals coming from them. So hopefully those are the guys. But regardless of who it ends up being, I think that needs to happen sooner than later.
No, I certainly agree with you. And I think that we're working towards it. I mean, I think you would hope they're working towards it, I should say, because I hate the fact that this is becoming a trend on the show today, but I agree with you on this sense.
Oh,
the Islanders
yeah.
need some consistency.
That's 3.
And hate it.
Well, at least you're not here for me to rub it in your face. At least you're not here for that.
I hate it so much. But you're right. But you are 100% right. You want that consistency. You want those guys to be able to develop a chemistry so that once you hit, like we were talking about, those 10, 15 game stretch at the end of the year where it's going to be the most important point of the season, that you have guys that have been playing together for a majority of the year.
Yeah.
Obviously, the fact that the schedule is so tightly compacted and the fact that you're going to have back-to-backs and you're going to have injuries and you're going to have COVID issues, that these guys are going to have to be able to play with different players on a drop of a dime, or drop of a hat, I should say.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want that chemistry. You want that situation where you had last year with the Pajot and you had you had Brassard with him for a majority of the playoffs, and a short time with the Islanders during the regular season. They had that chemistry, and you could sense that and you could see that, and it led to a lot of success for Pajot and Brassard at certain points. So you'd like to see that, and you'd like to see, if you're talking about JG Pajot, and I think that's really where a lot of this lies, is that third line, is that you want to see him with a guy that's an offensive-minded player, because it's going to benefit him as much as it's going to benefit a Wallstrom or Bellows. And I think obviously those are the 2 guys you would like to see. They were given a chance the other day to both be out there. I think they both looked really well. I think they both deserved a chance to be back in the lineup. I understand that Trotz wanted to see what else he had in his arsenal and give Zarnik and Timashov a chance, and that's fine. There wasn't really that much of a drop in production from Saturday to Sunday. But at the same time, I think at this point now that you have that feeling out period, that grace period.
Uh-oh. Did we just lose Christian? That's a problem. I think we just lost Christian. Let me see if I can get him back, guys. I'll try very quickly. And hopefully we can work this out. Otherwise, we might be going solo here. Hold on. Let me try to get him back. Bear with me, folks. All right. Let's give him one more try here. We're hanging out. We're waiting to call Christian. We're hanging out. All right, it's ringing. Let's see if we get him. I think we got him. He's back.
I'm back.
All right, praise the heavens, he's back. All right, so we obviously missed the tail end of what you were trying to say there. So why don't you pick up where you left off?
I think the crux of what I was just trying to say is I think we've reached the point where we've gotten past the grace period. We know what a lot of these guys can do now out there on the ice. It's time to give whoever that may be. I mean, if it was me making the decision, I would say you put Wallstrom, Bellows.
Yeah. In a perfect world.
And that's it. Yeah. And then you go from there. Obviously, again, you kind of have the situation with the taxi squad and the way things are laid out. That's easier said than done. But in a perfect world, that's the decision you make, because I think those guys have given the team when they're out there a chance to win, and they've played well enough to earn that opportunity.
Sure, without question. And I think we'll still look a little bit at what happened in some of these games. A couple of points I still want to go on, and we'll look ahead real quick at the games coming up. But Christian, what do you say we do the hero of the week?
All right, let's do it.
All right, folks, we're going to do the hero of the week right now. When you hear this song, that means it's time for the hero of the week. brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels half-price hero. And folks, we talked about this 5-game road trip, this losing streak that the team is on. So you have to imagine that we really had to reach into the depths here to try to come up with something to represent a hero of the week. But before we get into that, the half-price hero of the week from Blue Line Deli and Bagels is the Godfather. It's got Cappy ham, Genoa salami, pepperoni, provolone, lettuce and tomato, oil and vinegar on a hero. It's the Godfather. Still a movie I haven't seen. I haven't seen any of those films, but
Yikes.
maybe one day. It is what it is.
Yikes.
So let's get the music out of here. And
It's one of the greatest masterpieces of modern American
you've
cinema.
seen it.
But whatever.
You've seen it. Oh, okay. Well, I look. It happens. It happens, man.
It's an embarrassment.
I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't.
Just like you.
Okay.
Embarrassment.
Good job. So, let's do the hero. So I kind of prefaced it already. Christian, I went first last week, so I'm going to let you try to justify our hero choices here tonight with you going first.
All right. Well, thank you, Sean. I appreciate the opportunity here to present our hero of the week. And I think, considering the tough stretch that it's been for the Islanders during the course of this road trip, it was tough. Sean and I struggled quite a bit to come up with the hero of the week for this week. But I think looking back on it, I think we came to the fairest conclusion, and that was rookie goaltender Ilya Sorokin.
There he is.
And I think looking at why we made this decision, because again, Sean and I struggled pretty hard to figure out who we were going to pick.
Yeah.
You look at the way he's played, and you look at the opportunities that he's given to the Islanders to win those games that he's gotten. He started in net. And I think especially coming off of Sunday's performance, his probably strongest performance yet since he's come to the NHL and since he's been playing in NHL games, that he was great out there. He gave the Islanders a chance to win. He made the timely saves. He made big saves when the Islanders needed him to. And I think the bigger issue for Sorokin has been obviously adjusting to the ice, adjusting to the bigger ice and the quicker pace of the NHL. But it's also been the fact that his teammates just haven't been scoring a whole lot in front of him. So
yeah.
it's tough to really get on him for the loss early in the week, and it's tough to get on him for the loss on Sunday when he did just about anything you could ask for, everything you could ask for from a goaltender, except maybe score in those instances. Yes, I understand he gave up a couple goals. It's going to happen.
Sure.
Some of them I'm sure he probably wants back over the course of his couple starts he's gotten.
Mm-hmm.
But I think overall the body of work has continued to get better every time he's been in net, and you see him a bit more comfortable. And as Shannon kind of pointed out, you saw those flashes of, wow, that's the highlight reel save we saw from the KHL. All right, that's the lateral movement we saw when he was in the KHL. There's a bit more comfortability as we've gone through each of these starts. So it's hard to pick a hero of the week. Obviously, I get that. I'm sure people are kind of rolling their eyes at us, trying to put even a remotely positive spin on it. But I think Sorokin deserves it here for the way he's continued to develop and get better each game he's been in.
Yeah, Christian, I think you did a very good job, as long-winded as that was, about Ilya Sorokin being worthy of the nomination. And yeah, I have to just echo it. Because, you could have picked, maybe an individual, a skater here or there. I'm actually seeing in some of the comments, somebody mentioned Anders Lee, somebody mentioned the first line. And, I could see why you might want to go down that road. But, there's also guys involved there that are in part responsible for why these games kind of headed south. And I don't think that really fell on Sorokin in these games. And as you mentioned, he's gotten more comfortable. He's performing much better. And also, like you said, he's starting to show those acrobatics and those highlight reel, saves that, were kind of teased in his time in the KHL. So, Christian, here I am agreeing with you. Ilya Sorokin,
nice.
There he is 2 times.
Wonderful.
Your unanimous hero of the week. That's twice in a row. That's 2 goalies in a row. We got it.
Yes.
The skaters got to pick it up, man. They got to pick it up,
But I think it's indicative of just kind of what we've seen over the course of the season so far from the Islanders, and even Barry Trotz was saying it during this road trip. There were nights when he just felt like he had one line, and it was very easy to figure out which line he was talking about. And that is it's kind of an indictment on the rest of the lineup where if the Islanders are going to be successful, they talk about it all the time, is they're rolling four lines. They're getting production from all four lines. They just haven't had that same kind of momentum during this 5-game road trip.
Right. I agree.
Until recently, you could say they got a little bit back to it in Philadelphia, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument maybe they deserve to take more than 2 points out of that city. But, there were some costly errors, some costly mistakes, and they paid for it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that more in depth now. But there you go, folks. Your Blue Line Deli and Bagels Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Half Price Hero of the Week, which is the Godfather, once again, turkey, ham, provolone, lettuce, tomato, mustard, on a hero. Is that I might have given you the wrong ingredients there. But you guys heard it before. Oh, I'm hitting wrong buttons now. Left and right. There's a little preview. That's hilarious. Yeah, we were keeping that one on the back burner for later. But Cappy ham, Genoa salami, pepperoni, provolone, lettuce and tomato, oil and vinegar on a hero. You can get it half price starting tomorrow through next week's show. Your Blue Line Deli and Bagels Hero of the Week. All right.
And shout out to Blue Line for being open today during the blizzard.
Yes,
so
dedication.
Ani and Company, thank you for being open during the chaotic snowstorm that we have going on outside.
Sean mess up a button, never. That's messed up, man. I'm gonna remember that. I guess I said 5 games in, five shows in, you can start busting that chops. So fair enough. I think. I mean,
it's been a pretty flawless. Not
other than your
wonky
Wi-Fi connection over there, where we lost you for a minute, but. Other than that, I mean, I think we've been doing all right.
It's not your fault. It's
not my fault.
You've done a pretty great.
Not my fault.
You've done a pretty great job running the board and all the technical details.
You see how much better we do when you're not here? I think that might be the difference. I'm just saying.
I'll leave that one alone.
All right. So let's just talk. There's a couple things I want to talk about. With these games, one of which was, and this ties into the whole third line conversation, is that major penalty in the third period taken by Leo Komarov. And, again, for a team that's just been trying to get some points here, trying to get back into their winning ways, you couldn't have, had worse timing for something like that to happen. And I don't disagree with Barry Trotz very much. In fact, anybody who's been listening to this show for the last couple of years knows that I've been pretty consistently pumping that guy up since he got here, obviously for very good reason. But I have to say I was not a fan of the fact that Leo got back in that game after he got out of the box, and not the biggest fan that he ended up lacing up the skates the next game. What do you have to say about that, Christian?
Yeah, I know that certainly was a point of contention for a lot of Islander fans and a lot of people, and I think rightfully so. It's interesting. Barry Trotz was asked about it after the game, if he had any regrets about putting Leo back out there after the penalty, and he kind of doubled down on it. He said he didn't have any regrets, and he talked about his veteran instincts and all that. And I think there are a lot of people that disagree with Barry Trotz that are in your camp, Sean, that felt that he, they didn't understand why he was back out there. And certainly when you look at anyone else, if that was Matt Barzal, if that was Beauvillier, if that had been, even a guy like Josh Bailey or Anders Lee or even Eberle, would they have gone back out there? It's an interesting kind of proposition because especially if it's one of the younger guys that makes a mistake like that. I mean, we've seen Barry Trotz not hesitate to just let them sit on the bench for a little bit and not be out there in those big situations. So it certainly was interesting to see him put him back out there in a situation like that, and that. Luckily, it didn't cost the Islanders in that instance, but obviously, you're kind of. It almost seems like you're rewarding him for the bad behavior, and then obviously he was out there for the goal against in the final.
Yes, missed assignment there. Yeah, so I mean, it kind of piled on top of each other there, and yeah, the PK was excellent during the major, but that's 5 minutes. Well, you're not really getting an opportunity to put the puck in the net yourself. I mean, that's a quarter of a period there. Right. They survived it, but there's a decent chance that maybe the Islanders might have potted a goal during that time if the penalty wasn't taken in the first place. It was needless, and when everybody is already a little on edge about getting wins here and getting some points in this tough division, it's just a really bad look. And for him to, again, be on the ice for that goal against, missing an assignment, it just compounds the whole issue. So, look, Barry, at the end of the day, he's still going to know better than me when it comes to the decisions to this roster and what they're doing. But I have to say, I wasn't a fan with how things went with Leo.
Yeah, no, I mean Barry, Barry can know better than the both of us, but we can still disagree with the decision.
Sure.
I think that's kind of the consensus here. It was an interesting choice. I don't know if I'm head coach, I make the same decision as him, but maybe there's something we don't know. Maybe obviously Leo Komarov is known for being kind of a penalty kill specialist and playing well on his own end at times, and other times you see him make mistakes where he's taking poorly timed penalties and putting the Islanders down in a situation they need him to be out there and not taking a penalty in the last, especially a major penalty in the last half of the game. So
yeah,
it certainly was a decision that I don't think many people would have made. You or me definitely would not have made. It sounds like
no, it doesn't. Once again, we're on the same page. It's happening a lot lately. But and then look, speaking of costly, poorly timed penalties, you have Barzal's penalty at the end of the game, in overtime last night, which ends up costing them a point as well. And and we've already kind of talked about the undisciplined play of Barzal on this show, and the fact that he's racking up the minutes. And yeah, he's still a young guy, but as Barry Trotz said, they need him out on the ice. So not only do you need him out on the ice to give your team the best chance to put in goals yourself, but I mean, the penalty kills. If there's a bright spot for this team going through this stretch of games, the penalty kills look pretty good, and dare I say, even the power play has looked a little better too. They've had some bad spots too. Don't get me wrong, but I have liked some of their power plays out there, the way they've been established in zone time and setting up chances. Hopefully some goals will start going into the net, but. Anyway, it's just this is something he has to grow out of sooner than later, because you can't have your star guy, a guy who's going to be looking to cash in 3 years, hopefully potting over a point per game clip here, which he's doing right now, 10 points in 9 games, I believe. But he's got to be held, he's got to hold himself to account, and he's got to learn how to, reel that stuff in. And understand that, look, there's a lot of emotion out there on the ice, and he's a fiery player. We see it all the time. But this is something he kind of has to reel in. And I'm sure he will, but he's showing us that he hasn't yet. And in this early going, it's just something to kind of heap on top of this pile of I suppose, negativity as far as the results that we're getting out of the Islanders so far that just needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, and I think, this is a conversation we've had in the past, too, about Matthew Barzal when it comes to kind of the poorly timed penalties or the errors. He's young. He's going to make these kind of emotional mistakes where, his emotions dictate what happens rather than him thinking things through quickly. But, in the same breath, it is a little bizarre that at this point in the season, with 24 penalties and minutes at this point, he's leading guys like Ross Johnson and Matt Martin, guys who you would historically think as guys who are going to lead the team in
right.
in penalty minutes, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And obviously that's something you want to clean up, because these are not penalties unlike, a Matt Martin or a Ross Johnson or even a Cal Clutterbuck, guys like that. Some of those are going to be penalties where they're, there's the minor penalties where for a slash or a hook or, a hit or something like that. But a lot of those penalty minutes too are going to be, things that occur from physical altercations, and that's the kind of aspect you expect from their game. For Matt Barzal, you don't necessarily want him making those mistakes, because not only do you put your team in that spot where you're down a man, but you're also don't have one of your best players and your best skaters and your best scorers out there on the ice for 2 minutes or more. And this seems to be kind of a continuing trend with him this season anyway. And you'd like to just see him skew it the other way. I don't think it's a huge point of concern at this point, but it's certainly noticeable. You're seeing it more, and you're noticing it more.
All this stuff is more noticeable when you're losing hockey games.
Exactly. That was going to be my point. You everything becomes much more hyper focused when you're putting together 4 or 5 losses instead of 4 or 5 wins.
Right. Well, hopefully he gets that element of his game together, because it literally has been, in most of these games, it's been coming down to this one play, right, that ends up burning them, and they end up taking 1 or 0 points out of these games, because it just seems like almost Murphy's Law, right? When something can go wrong, it does, and it's really hurt them so far. And look, they're going to get out of this rut. the play is going to improve. I fully believe that. It's a shame that this is how they're kind of starting their season, but hopefully they can turn this around and get things back going. And you mentioned Bavillier's name before. Is there any update on his status and when he may be able to get back into some games?
So we're still looking at a day-to-day situation. I think Barry Trotz had indicated last week that there might be an opportunity. We see him when he was talking last week. He said next week. So you kind of rearranging the words. There's a chance, I guess, you see him at some point this week coming up. But it's kind of unclear. It's a very fluid situation. Like I said, he's still day-to-day.
Okay, fair enough. And are Josh Bailey and Brock Nelson still day-to-day with their offensive output on the ice? You got Bailey with the deflection goal. Finally, he's on the board. That's good. Hopefully that opens the floodgates a little bit. But, yeah, another theme, I guess, of this show recently is how this team is kind of – when they are getting the rare win, they're kind of riding the backs of those three guys up front, Anders Lee, Matt Barzal, and Jordan Eberle.
Yeah, that's been the theme. I mean, like I said, like we were talking about before, Barry Trotz talking about how he has only one line that's producing for him, and that's a huge thing. The Islanders need those guys. They need the Josh Baileys, the Anthony Beauvilliers, the Brock Nelsons, especially Brock Nelson took such a huge turn in the course of his career. Same with Josh Bailey, for the most part, in the last couple of years in their offensive output and their goal scoring, their consistency in their play. And they've become such a huge part of the organization, right. And obviously have had such big playoffs in the last couple of years as well. So the fact that, again, we're kind of having this conversation, all right, where is Josh Bailey, where is Brock Nelson early on in the season? It's unfortunate because these are guys you need to produce, and these are guys that need to be stepping up. And again, obviously with kind of the mixing and matching with the bottom six, if you will, with Pajot kind of moving different line mates every game. It seems like that. I don't even want to say you want to let him off the hook, but there is a certain understanding you have that his production is not where you would have expected it to be, right, because there's so much kind of changing going on. And then obviously the fourth line, which it's had some good days, it's had some okay days, and I think even Barry Trotz has been one to admit at this point that there's been times where he needs them to step up and be a little bit more. Or do a little bit more, I should say, because the other lines are not producing as well. So it's tough. The Islanders are in a tough spot because you hope that goals by Bailey and you hope goes by Brock Nelson lead to more offensive output and more offensive production. But again, it goes back to that theme that's kind of been the whole show that we've been talking about is consistency. The Islanders need to be consistent. They need to play their game consistently, and that's when they're rewarded. And that's when you have Brock Nelson putting in goals. That's when you have Josh Bailey being able to transition and set up these great opportunities for his line mates. That's when you have the fourth line being productive, and that's when it also starts with that or third line being productive, and it starts and then it goes to the fourth line being productive and being able to be that energy line that the Islanders need them to be and create that chaos in their own end, which creates opportunity in the offensive zone. So, right. Again, it's that consistency. It's playing that Barry Trotz style of hockey, and it goes back to just getting back to that style of play. And the Islanders are going to need to do that starting with Buffalo on Tuesday.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to this as well in your response, is that these guys have proven that they can perform, and they're going to get a longer – because, look, you point – the fact that these guys aren't producing out right now, right? Brock's going through a tough spell. Bailey's going through a tough spell. Beauvillier was before he got hurt. But it's like, what do you do? What do you do? Like, they're not rookies. They're going to get a longer leash because they've produced in the past. They're not making just game-breaking mistakes, but they're just not putting the puck in the net. They're not producing. So what else can Barry Trotz really do other than mix and match the lines and just be patient with these guys? Because they're not getting dealt. They're not getting, sent down to Bridgeport. They're probably not going to get a seat up in the press box either. I mean, that's just how it is. So, I mean, as frustrating as it might be for some fans to watch these guys and not perform, I mean, it's probably just going to be wait and hope that these guys get it together. I mean, they've proven that they can. Again, it's the microscope is on it a little bit more because it's the start of the season. If the Islanders had opened up the season 6-3, 7-2, whatever the case may be, and you have a couple of guys, having a hard time, all right, they'll get it together. But because they're also not putting points up in the standings, you got the spotlight on it now. But, like, again, what's the solution other than just kind of waiting and hoping that these guys break out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's one that we kind of alluded to at the start of this when we're talking about how do the Islanders be consistent again
Yeah.
and find a way to be consistent for 60 minutes. And I think that's the biggest thing. It has to come from inside that locker
Yeah.
room. It has to come
Does.
from leadership, and it has to come from Anders Lee and Josh Bailey and those guys that are the veterans in that locker room, and they set the tone for everybody else, and it has to come from them at that point. I think the Islanders coaching staff is giving them the tools. Barry Trotz is a Stanley Cup winning coach. I don't think that it's a situation where the players aren't listening to the coaching staff or anything like that. I know I've seen some of that on social media.
Some people are starting to talk about the
crazy.
losing the room element. We're not there yet. No, we're far from that.
Right, and
far from that.
I mean, it's social media, and it's kind of
right.
Everyone's kind of losing their minds after a couple tough losses.
People like sharing their ideas.
The fan base is
sharing thoughts. Some people.
Fan base is very passionate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. Fan base is very passionate, and they get all riled up when things don't go well,
Sure.
and as they should.
Sure.
It's not, the Islanders shouldn't be let off the hook for the bad 5-game road trip. But it comes down to the players in the locker room have to figure it out. They have to themselves be able to find that consistency and get into that rhythm. Part of it is obviously putting together a consistent lineup. Part of that is finding J.G. Pageau, 2 consistent wingers.
Yeah.
That's not that he's playing with a different guy every other night. And part of that is just being, and I think part of it, that also leads to a little bit more consistency, a little more routine, and a little more where it makes it easier to have that 60-minute effort because guys are used to each other at that point. You're seeing Barry also start to mix and match the lineups at different points too, or the lines at different points too. So, but I think at the end of the day, it's got to come from those guys. There's not much more you can do.
Exactly. You can shuffle guys around the taxi squad and whatnot, but again, it's still not going to be Josh Bailey, Anthony Beauvillier, any of those guys. Jordan, they're all just going to have to figure it out. Brock Nelson, you're just going to have to keep the faith, folks. That's all we got. Just hope that they get it together. I think they will. That's why I got the hashtag Believe shirt on. It's not over yet. It's only 9 games, but they still got to get it together soon. So I think we're pretty good highlighting the players from this past week. Is there anybody else we need to talk to? I think we're good there. So we'll just look ahead real quick. You got 2 games, you got a couple of home games coming up now. Again, I don't know what the benefit of that is when you don't have the crowd there, other than knowing the intricacies of your arena and your rink. But anyway, they got 2 coming up against Buffalo Tuesday and Thursday. And like we said before, these games are going to be tough, regardless of where you might think they end up in the standings. It's going to be I'm looking forward to seeing Taylor Hall and Eric Stahl in Sabre jerseys to see how they perform, assuming that now I believe I might have caught in the chat that the Sabres did not make it to Long Island tonight, and they're going to try to make it tomorrow. I think I caught that. So hopefully we actually have the games running on schedule. But
yes, the Sabres stayed in Buffalo today.
Okay.
I reached out to Buffalo PR earlier today.
You got the scoop.
I mean, obviously you saw the image. You saw the image from practice, and then Buffalo PR reached back out.
Okay.
But ultimately, they stayed in Buffalo. They practiced in Buffalo, and then their plan is to fly out tomorrow morning to Long Island. So
very good.
I think the expectation is the storm on Long Island is supposed to start to switch over to, I want to say, a sleet rain mix later as the morning goes on. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's kind of the same forecast the Sabres have gotten, because that seems to be the plan. Obviously, both the Islanders, when they travel, and when the opposing team travels to Long Island, if they're flying, they're usually flying into Long Island Republic Airport. Mm-hmm. So you would imagine that that's the same forecast that they're seeing and anticipating, so that they can travel out here tomorrow. But I think too, if you're the Islanders, obviously you don't get much advantage from teams that travel this season, but you're going to have a Buffalo Sabres team that's literally flying in the same day, getting off a plane, coming to the rink, and getting ready to play. So
right.
There's an opportunity there. You could say that they take advantage of a team that's going to be a little travel weary.
Kind of like the opportunity they had against the Washington Capitals, with all their big guns being out and coming up with no points. Yeah, we did fail to mention that earlier. But yeah, once again, you have a Buffalo team who on paper is supposedly going to be a weaker team. As Christian just points out, they're going to be coming off the plane that day. And not for nothing, but these Islanders have to be hungry. They got to come out like they did against the Caps in that first game and pot 3 goals in the first period, but then hang on to a damn lead. I mean, that's really what we need to see here. You mentioned before how they haven't really scored the first goal too many times here. So, their first period, I think tomorrow night is going to be really indicative of how things may go in the short term here, because you got to figure it's got to be weighing on these guys mentally. And, again, a big opportunity to get 4 points against the Buffalo Sabres. And then Saturday's going to be tough because they got the Pens coming to town.
Yes, yeah. And then obviously the Rangers next week on Monday. So there's a couple tough games that are coming up here. Luckily the Rangers isn't a long trip. It's not necessarily a home game, but going to Madison Square Garden with no fans is not necessarily doesn't necessarily feel like a road game either at this point. So it's a tough week coming up. Buffalo presents a challenge. Pittsburgh obviously always presents a challenge, and the Rangers certainly, considering the week that they've had, will be looking to get some positive momentum by that time that they face the Islanders on Monday after Super Bowl Sunday. So it's the Islanders have a tough road ahead of them. It doesn't, like I said at the top of the show, it doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier. It only gets tougher from here. And as teams get more comfortable and adapt to this COVID schedule that we have, things will be interesting. The Islanders now need to batten down the hatches, and they need to get it together. There's lessons to learn from this road trip, and you hope that they've taken them, they've absorbed them, and that they put them to good use on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and this is going to sound weird, my last thought here, but it almost seems like the team has to relearn how to play regular season hockey, because we saw that they mastered playoff hockey in the return to play. They were fantastic pretty much throughout until they hit a tougher opponent in the Tampa Bay Lightning. But they were more or less like a well-oiled machine during that run, and they knew how to play close, tight games, and they did a great job. And for some reason, they're playing the rest of the league now, or at least the division, because of the way things are right now. And for some reason, this adjustment to playing regular season hockey just hasn't worked out for them. I don't know, just a thought. But the bottom line is, they got to get back to work tomorrow. If they can't take 3 out of 4 points against Buffalo coming up here, I think that's it's decent reason for Islander fans to start getting a little more upset and a little more panicky as this short season goes on. So with that, Christian, you got anything else, or can we wrap this thing up? That's a no. Okay, very good. Visually, I could see that. Unfortunately, the people on listening to the podcast have no idea what your response was, but that's fine. All right, folks. So, cueing the outro music here. Want to thank Shannon Hogan of MSG Network for joining us. Big thanks to her. Fantastic spot. Want to thank our sponsors, Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Head on over for great food, great service, and great people. Check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com for their great selections and hockey-themed heroes. Big thanks to Ty Technology, a voice-over IP company providing phone services for businesses across the country. Check them out at TyTechnology.com for all your telecom needs, or give them a call at 516-856-7800 and get 3 free months of service. Give them a call, and of course, as always, thank you to you for hanging out with us here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY, and for those of you listening later on your favorite podcast provider. So next week, once again, folks, you have that special football game coming up on Sunday. So we probably won't be doing our show Sunday night. We're still figuring out, as you mentioned, Christian, the Islanders play on Monday. So we're probably going to do something either Friday night, maybe a pregame show Saturday. We'll see. We're going to talk about it. We'll obviously keep you guys posted on social media. He shook his head. No, we're not going to talk about it. So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you.
I have to be the contrarian.
You keep doing that. It's messed up, man. We got to be a team. No, we don't. It's fine. I don't care. I'm glad you're not here. Glad you're not here. So, folks, big thanks. Remember, just follow us on social media at HockeyNightNY. Follow Christian at C_Arnold01 on Twitter. Follow myself at Shawnee Hockey. And if you're still doing the listening thing and not watching us on Twitch, remember to please rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're doing the watch thing on Twitch, tell your friends. Give us a follow. Let's build it up here. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Love the live chat. Thank you so much. We will see you next week. Button.